I want us to do an agreement today. When I say something that you like, I want you to answer, hell yeah. All right, let's do a test. 1, 2, 3. Hell yeah. Shit, you're the best audience. I love this. I was thinking about what I would say to this audience, and I thought about, and even this morning, I just landed like 7 a.m. today in JFK, and I was putting my slides on my way here and thinking, should I go very technical and like build something and all that? Should I go a little more strategic? And to Namita's point, we actually just pushed an entire course on like hands-on building this agent. So I was like, all right, I think the thing that I can share that they won't find anywhere else is some insights given the very unique positioning that we have at CrewAI. I mean, we're sitting on the cutting edge of what is happening right now and being able to observe what everyone's doing. So there's a lot of interesting insights and tricks and things that I think could be interesting for me to share. Kind of like give you an insight on what is actually working, what is noise, and things like that. So I think that will be fun. Hopefully you enjoy it. I want to start with one number. That number is 450 million. It's insane. That's the number of AI agents we're running a month. All right, there you go. I like it. Thank you. But I gotta say, more than the number in itself, what I'm impressed is the scale. This is what quarterly executions of agents and flows are now plotting using CrewAI tech. Last quarter alone, we executed 1.1 billion agentic executions. Those are not individual agents. Those are crews that can have 3, 4, 5 agents. So if you go into the agent level, it's going to be even more than that. It's a little insane what is happening. And this number is big, but at the same point, it's so small because I keep thinking about the potential that this can have. And we're starting to see some of the value that actually can come from this. Now, I assume that everyone in here knows what is an AI agent, but I will spend 2 minutes just to level set, just in case you don't, but it's going to be 2 minutes. So you all know LLMs, right? All right. They're great at creating content. If you ask them to write an email for you, they will do so. And if you ask them to make it funny, they'll give it a try, right? They'll give it a try. It might not work. But more interesting is if you ask it to make a decision. Let's say that you give 2 options of emails. And you say, here's email A, and here is email B. What email is better? And these models can actually pick one. Say like, oh, email A is better because of X, Y, and Z. And it's that ability for making reasonable decisions, decisions that fall within reason, that you can explore when you start to turn these models into agents. But now, instead of choosing emails, what is just a silly example, they can actually choose between taking actions, using tools, making decisions. So you're giving it a goal, you're giving it a task, and now these agents will decide how I achieve that. Will I call a tool? Will I pull data from a CRM? Will I push something to my ERP? It's going to decide how it gets there. So the AI is what is controlling the application flow, and that's roughly what an AI agent is. To put in simple words, it has agency. It gets to decide what is going to happen next. Now, the thing that is most interesting about this, because all right, this is very interesting, but like, what is the big deal about this? Well, it allows you to do things that you couldn't do before. One, allows you to create things. You can create reports, images, videos, whatever it might be, something that was not as easy before. Two, it gives you the ability to react to things in real time. So you can send, for example, one task today and a completely different task tomorrow. And this agent's going to be able to adapt. It's going to be able to understand, given the data that you're sending, how it's supposed to behave. So this idea of handling and expecting behaviors, self-healing, it's something very interesting. And also its ability of take actions. actually going out there and make a decision and actually take an action based on that. So the combination of these three things actually create a lot of opportunity for automation. And again, automations that you just couldn't do before. Now, so what, right? why should I care about it? And this is where I think are gonna get a little more interesting. On every major technology shift, I have seen on these companies that the business logic finds a new house, right? It goes and moves somewhere. So when you think back on the 90s, the desktop apps, and there was like those big players that grabbed that market. A bunch of the business logic now moved into that. They're like into those business apps. Then you go into the 2000s with the web, and now Google, Salesforce, ServiceNow, they grabbed a chunk of the business logic, and a bunch of that moved into that next. And then you look at the cloud with all the APIs, and that's when we saw like Snowflake growing like crazy and Databricks. So all this business logic now, it's moving there as well. So with all these shifts, there's always this ability for this creating not only new opportunity for new things, but also the part of this logic and this value gets redistributed. And when I look about AI agents, and maybe I'm claiming too much, put our name in there, but that's what we're going for. It's that I see AI agents being more than an engineering project. It's a fundamental shift. It is a new layer. And if you want to build the bullish case for AI agents, it could eat a lot of the software away. A lot of the systems goes from having logic in them to becoming systems of records. And this logic gets moved into this abstraction, kind of like that we're calling AI agents now. And if you don't believe me, it's okay, it's fair, you don't have to, but you also see the pattern on the market. I mean, come on, let's be real. Sergey from Google, the guy never even do interviews, and now he's showing up for podcasts. Satya is taking Bill Gates out of retirement to do live coding with Copilot. Like, there's something here that the biggest leaders in the industry are seeing, is that it's like, all right, this can actually eat software away. This is shaking the industry in a way that our place is not necessarily guaranteed. We need to get our hands dirty, and actually like jump into this and figure out what is gonna be our spot. So it's very interesting to see this movement and a little bit on kind of like how the market's going. So when I think about agents, again, I think in such a broader aspect than as a technology project, as something that will be only living in the realm of the engineering. I think it's going to be spearheaded by engineers, but it's going to impact entire businesses. And we're seeing some of that. If I look at the biggest companies in the globe, this is how many engineers they have in there using CrewAI. What for me is insane to see like these number of engineers just kind of like using CrewAI to build these automations. And this again, these are not small companies. These are crazy companies, like these so huge they are. So it's very exciting to see that not only the main ones that I mentioned, but a lot of this solid business also jumping into that. Now, use case time. I will stop every now and then to talk about a use case. And I did hear that, hell yeah, thank you. That one person in the audience. I'm going to sprinkle a few use cases throughout the thing, right? This is one, it's interesting. It is a CPG. CPG is a company that do something that you can buy in the supermarket. Right? Something that you can buy in the supermarket if you want to. Think about it that way. They had a specific process because as every CPG, if you're selling something to consumers, you're going to have people asking for reimbursement requests. And if you're opening yourself for reimbursement requests, you're going to have people trying to fraud you, what is not fun. So they end up having a very manual process to verify, is this a fraudulent request or not? And this involves humans, this involves looking like, is this a new account? Is this an account that has done this before? A lot going on in there. But you can actually automate this with agents, and so they did. The entire process went from 3 days to validate this reimbursement to 10 minutes. What is insane? Because now if you're a scammer, well, I guess like you're unlucky, but for the people that actually wants the hand reimbursement, this is such a better experience. You don't need to be sitting around waiting 3 days to get a money back, right? So this is just one use case. We're going to sprinkle more throughout the presentation, and you're going to see these use case times every time that we do. But this is a little bit on kind of what's going on, an example of real use case driving real value. Now, I want to start digging a little deeper, right? I want to start talking about, we already get what AI agents are. You already understand kind of like the bullish vision for AI agents and what they can be and what role they can take into the business in the future. I want to talk about building and deploying, because I think that's where a lot of people are spending time now, is on that building phase. And talking a little bit about the ROI of actually having these things running. Right now, in my perspective, there is a race to the bottom to making building agents extremely simple. And you can see that because there's many open source tools, there's many paid tools, there's pro code, there is low code, and everything in between. And everyone's trying to make building these agents easier and easier. But if I plot a line of how much effort it takes, it is funny to me that everyone's focusing on this. Because in the end of the day, when I go talk with some of these companies, when some of these companies reach out to CrewAI, and they're already like trying and experimenting with agents, they usually tell me things that hint that they're stuck in there and they cannot get into the deploying phase. Basically, as they try to get deploying phase, the value of whatever they're using diminishes very rapidly. And they say, we have all these blockers and we're stuck here. We have hundreds of use cases. We have POCs that are working, but I want to get there and I can't. And the reason why they can't is a mixed bag. There's a few things that are AI related. They say like, oh, I need better evaluations. I need proper guardrails. I need all this. And there are many things that are not even AI related. They're like, well, we need single sign-on. We need RBAC. We need to deploy these on our own infrastructure. More traditional engineering problems, especially when you're thinking about bigger companies. They're like, we cannot get into the other side of this with any of that. And I think what people don't get is there is, and this is going to sound like a hot take, but you're going to get it, there is no value in building agents. Because building is the tax that you're paying. The value is on running them. Like when you start building an agent, your ROI is negative. You're spending time on it. So if I had to plot this out, so this is the ROI, and on the other side's production, this is what your ROI looks like. You're losing money out of the way, and then when you turn it on in production and then really starts to run many times, then boom, now it's worth it. But on the building side, it can be fun, you can learn a lot, it can be easy, it can be fast, but you're only cashing out on the opportunity once they're actually using it. So I think like there's a gap in there, and that's, I mean, I'm pitching you CrewAI. That's basically what we focus, right? That's the thing. But you get to see that it's a little bit weird that there's so much demand for the building and prototyping. Meanwhile, a lot of the value is actually sitting on the other side. So when I look into this, I think about building and managing, and that's kind of like how we see it. So I think like open source make it extremely easy for people to build and prototype. And then as people mature and once you get into the value, all those other features, it's because they're actually getting value from it. So I think it's fair that we can offer a paid product on that. And that's kind of like how we thought about the company internally. Now, how many of you know CrewAI? All right, how many of you don't know CrewAI? There's a few people that have no clue what they're doing here. All right, that's okay, no problem. Just kidding. In the end of the day, this is what happens. Like we started as an open source tool, so helping engineers to build this like automations. We did a few courses with Andrew, including the new one that we just mentioned. And I gotta say, it's amazing. Like these courses, I really appreciate everyone that reached out and that love it. It is a lot of effort. If anything, I don't know if the deep learning AI team is in there, thank you for bearing with me. I'm such a terrible person to work with. I really appreciate you bearing with my scheduling and everything. But we have been putting these courses together that has been exceptionally nice. And then because of these courses, I realized that people really want to learn. So we start doing certifications. You end up getting a bunch of people certified, for example, in IBM, and IBM became a major partner. We actually, 2 months ago, we closed the US Department of Defense with IBM. And I'm still taking my victory lap because it was a head-to-head against Palantir, and we came out on top. And hey, there you go. Thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate it. So that has been exciting. But then we start to see something interesting. Jobs being created. Like AWS opening a position specifically hiring for CrewAI for their strategic accounts. And well, we are working with many. Strategic accounts is kind of like the top 25%, right? The 25% that pays the most. We're working with a lot of those companies, so that makes sense. But that was kind of like building that bullish case for us that, wow, there's a business in here. And that's kind of like how we start to do a lot of that. And we just kept inviting people to talk about this. What is this idea of AI agents? Use case time. And there you go. I hope it's not the same person, but I appreciate it. Financial institution, global 500. Main problem. Who here knows what KYC is? Raise your hands. I see the pain on you all that know what it is. It's know your customer. It's a process through all companies, for example, like banks or insurances. Whenever they have a new customer, they got to do a big dig on all the data on that person. They need to understand who that person is, what they come from, their taxes, everything in between. Very manual process, basically many different services that you need to pull this data from. They decide to automate that KYC process. One, the first report was more accurate than what the humans were producing, what was a little bit low-key scary in the first place. Part of the processes went down from 1 week to 15 to 30 minutes, and the entire Know Your Customer process actually went 4x faster now using AI agents. Again, insane to see like the use cases. We're talking about this in such an abstract level. I just want to make sure that I bring like what are these customers actually doing and what they're building. So this is another one. Now, the second thing that I want to talk about, we're talking about this idea of building and deploying and where the value is. I want to talk about planning and designing. So when you think about planning and designing, this is usually a matrix that I use to think about use cases. They usually live somewhere in this complex and precision matrix, where you can have anything in any of these quadrants. An example of a high complexity, high precision is filling out IRS forms. It's complex, and you cannot get it wrong. And an example of like a high complexity but low precision might be creating educational material. Like you want this to be high quality, but there's less about right and wrong. There's many different kinds of materials. So it's a little more easy for you to kind of like get around with that. And a low complexity, low precision could be help me prepare a report for a sales call. What would it be? Probably very simple to do for an agent. Now, we realize there's people that there's two ends of a spectrum. It's what we're noticing. One, use cases that people want to optimize for agency, where they want to say, hey, I really wanted these agents to figure everything out. What are the tools they're going to use? What are like how they're going to work together, how they're going to delegate work and all that. In the other side of the spectrum, we have this idea of a flow. Like I have a if this, then that. I wanted this to happen first and those things to happen next. And maybe I add an LLM in there, but that's all that I need. So there's two ends of the spectrums, and I think both of those are fair. I think like a lot of the engineering principles that brought us this far still apply. And one of them is KISS. Keep it simple, stupid, right? It's just like, hey, if you don't need an agent, don't do an agent. So this different side of the spectrum, I think they complement each other, but there is a pattern that I'm seeing that is interesting and I didn't see before. And I'm calling this pattern agentic systems because they're not crews, they're not agents, but they're also not flows. They're both intertwined. So you have a backbone that is deterministic, where you're saying this will happen first, then this will happen next, but you can then opt in how much agency you want on different steps. So maybe I just want one LLM call, maybe I want to just one agent, maybe I want an entire group of agents that we call a crew. So a good example would be something like this. I start a conversation, right? I send a message, so it's a conversational experience. That message needs to be processed, like what I want to do with that. To do that, I just need an LLM. I need nothing else other than that. Then let's say that I just said, hi, like there's nothing to do there. Well, that should trigger an answer, goes back, ready for the next message. But let's say that I have something super complex that needs to do some sort of deep research. Well, that could kick off an entire crew. And now that's when you want more agents because you want these agents to research, to query, to analyze, to create a report, and eventually bring it back for you to an answer. So this is a pattern that I'm finding that is being way more common nowadays for most of the use cases, where you might want to like some of that deterministic backbone, but you want to opt in and then when you want to bring like these different levels of agents. So it's an interesting pattern. Unclear yet, like, is this the future? Is this the next year? Is this the current state of things? But it's what we're seeing out there, just getting a lot of traction. Use case time. There you go. I like it. Global telecom. This is a little bit of a weird one, so bear with me. Every use case that we're talking about so far has been efficiency gains, saving money. This is generating revenue, in a way. And is there anyone that works in a telecom here? There's one guy. What I don't get about telecoms is they never want to do just telecom. They always want to do other things as well. Go figure, right? So that's the thing. This company, they wanted to try a new line of business. They say, we have all this data. We know who these people are, where they live, what phone they have, what are their patterns, if they're prepaid or postpaid. So we have all this. Can we use this data to define a credit score and lend them money if they want to? And they're like, well, we can. But if they want to do this as a regular business, that means that now you have to hire an entire huge team, right? To understand like how you establish all these things together. And what they decide to do is build the entire thing with Cruise. So they use agents to basically analyze the customer behavior, analyze the patterns, and create this new line of business. And because they're automating the whole thing with agents, they can actually get the money, access to money in 2 days, what is insane. Let me just double check if I'm being about to be thrown off stage. I'm good on time?
We have about 5 minutes. If you want Q&A, then I would suggest you wrap up.
Ooh, all right. So I'm going to fast track things, folks, real quick. Bear with me, we're at the end. Needs of the stack. What is getting in the way? We're talking about this, so we don't need to revisit it. LLMs were adopted cutting the edge of these applications. Random people finding out and doing use cases created many problems. Information leaking, use cases that are not shared. What we're seeing with agents is more of a central adoption under a CIO, a CDIO, a CTO, a COO, where they're controlling all the guardrails, all the different settings, the LLMs, the PII filtering, and then enabling different teams. So it's a different implementation pattern that we're seeing out there. We have basically observing this idea of building, integration, observing, optimizing, managing, and scaling. Those seems to be the main things that people care about. What I would translate into simpler terms, get started building trust and delivering value. That's it in the end of the day. So this is kind of like the pattern that we're seeing. You can explode each of those 6 things into many individual features. And that's where it starts to get into memory, tools, knowledge, and all those things, but we don't need to get there given the time. But it's where you can kind of like explode those things. And there is this idea of a stack that is coming together from the cloud providers to the data providers to the LLMs, and then an entire new layer of agentic things, where basically we're grabbing that piece and calling the agent's operations side of the thing. And then there's a little more that we could talk about the agent's operations platforms, but in the sake of time, I want to tell you about the course that we just did. If you want to see more of that, there's a QR code there that you can sign up for the course. And I want to go into Q&A. So thank you so much. Appreciate it.
So we have time for a couple of questions.
Give it once.
Yeah.
There's one there.
Back there.
Hey, thanks. Great presentation. I'm curious what you've seen or what you'd recommend for like shared context, persistent context between different agents. Is there best practice there that you've seen, or
when you mean share, so your question is if there's best practice around sharing context. You mean sharing context with these agents?
Yeah, so let's say there's like multiple users using different systems and different agents for different workflows, for them to have some shared context window.
It's actually a problem that we are hearing from some companies, and that is like, well, we're using agents, but there's many people building agents in this organization, and we're building the same things twice. We are rebuilding the same tools twice, and there's no like central thing. What we have been doing is we specifically have a feature that they like. It's called agent repository. So all your agents are within that, so you can reuse them many times over, right? So if you, let's say, someone in one part of the team built something that it's a very incredible sales agent, they can now reuse that across the entire company. Same thing for specific tools. Is what we have been seeing, companies trying to create this idea of an internal repository to be reusable across the entire stack.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
That was like that was part of it, right? I think what you're talking about is how to make different agents and tools and things like that, like the toolkit, I guess, agent toolkit that you share. But I guess just like the context, is there like a constantly evolving?
Oh, like long-term memory and that kind of thing. Well, that's cool. Yeah, we see there's definitely the idea of different kinds of memory. Yeah. There's like short-term memory, there's long-term memory, and there's also this idea of entities, remembering things, right? So as these agents remember things, how they store that, so as they run over and over, they don't need to research or do the same work. So we're seeing a lot of people using either RAG or graph RAG as backbones to implement memories for agents. Some frameworks come with them embedded. We come with something embedded, but also other frameworks also come with their own implementations. But this idea of memory, I think there was a bunch of implementations early on in the last 2 years that have been somewhat naive. I think now there's a lot more people thinking about like, all right, what would be like a very robust implementation of what this look like? Yeah.
Thank you, Joe. Okay, one more question from this side. Okay, and then one last question after that.
Yeah, I have a use case which we are trying to address. And this is to have multiple agents just carry out a conversation to simulate a conversation on an ethical issue. And how would that work? So just need some ideas on, building that kind of an application. And if CrewAI can assist.
Yeah.
That.
We have one use case that is kind of like that. It would be kind of like a QA. Like I want these agents to simulate something, so it's kind of like QAing something. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, but it's more like you're chatting with a chatbot, and the agents behind the scene. So it's like a group discussion. You're having a group discussion on this.
Yeah.
With multiple characters.
Yeah, we see some implementations of that. Usually what people want is, I want to have one single entry point, so it feels that I'm talking with one thing, but behind the scenes, you might have many agents that are actually doing the work. Right. So it feels like it's just a regular ChatGPT, but then you ask it to do some crazy things, and it goes and do what is honestly probably very similar on the ChatGPT implementation itself. When you ask it to like do a deep research, it triggers probably a multitude of things that happens in the background. But yeah, that's a very usual implementation. We see that for exploring financial data, for example, is a very common use case.
Just one addendum to that.
Yeah.
So with the GPT, they've come up with some kind of an SDK. Would you be able to develop an extension on ChatGPT to do something like that?
I haven't seen that on ChatGPT, no. But you can do something with CrewAI that would be custom. But I don't think ChatGPT allows you to extend that. They have the existence API that is somewhat similar, but it's detached from the regular experience.
So you need to create your own interface.
Yeah, there's a few things that come a little more packaged, but yes.